This is Ken Moss, and I'm going to go through the project called the Global Enterprise Cloud Identity. And in this project, I've created a solution in Visual Studio 2010 using VisualBasic.net as the application language. And in this case, I have Visual Studio up, and you can see in here the project I have and all the different classes and things that make it up. And I'm going to go ahead and hit F5 to run the application so we can take a look at the prototype that's been developed so far. Now in here, so far, all I have is a slideshow and the autofill. And we're going to go ahead and click on the slideshow. And in this slideshow, I'm going to go through what Geci is and kind of how it works. Geci stands for Global Enterprise Cloud Identity. And I was working on the concept to develop something that will allow multiple users to all share their information in a cloud environment, but have it in a way where they could share the data with other individuals and other vendors and different agencies that they deem appropriate, where they have full control of the data and access to it. So in here, to keep the information centralized, the cloud is the best opportunity that we have to store the information. And the way this is done is using a database in an online service, such as Microsoft Azure, which is what I'm using, to store the back-end database, and then allowing the client to use either like a Windows client or maybe even a web client or something on like an Android or an iPhone. But having that cloud as the back-end storage is important because it's accessible anywhere. One important aspect of having this Geci is having it identified by a third party and verified to be accurate. And an example of what I've done in the past with the government is created a SSL certificate that I can install on my machine, and anything I do with the government, they look for that certificate. And they see it, and then they allow me access to whatever I need. And this would be the same way. Whoever purchases the actual Geci would qualify for or had to fill out the form for the certificate, and they would use that information to install on their machine, and then whenever they went to access the Geci website or the application, it would automatically know who they were and give them access to the full data rights that they have. Now other vendors would also have their own Geci, and so would other people. And inside the settings, you could share how you want that interaction to happen between parties. Now we also have layered security. So in the three different layers are certificate-based, which is kind of like what the Geci registration would have. Then encryption key, which maybe if they didn't want to apply for a full certificate and you wanted to trust the vendor with the data, then maybe they just needed a key between you to encrypt the data back and forth. And then public access. This would be more for like social networking aspects and auto-filling information on web forms and stuff like that. Now the global control is the important piece of all this, because I've seen a lot of different implementations that are a little more scaled back than this. For instance, Microsoft's Passport thing that they do. It's very cumbersome to use that I've found, and even though it has a checkbox to remember your settings, it never remembers my settings, and I have to log in every single time. So this would be more, using a certificate on the hard drive is a lot safer way to do it. And then giving full control to the user is an important piece of it, because you want to know exactly what the other agencies and people are able to look at inside your data. And you want to have the ability to turn that on and off at any time you want. Partitioned access is important also. For instance, if maybe you have like a PIN that you want to use to give people access, so anybody that wants to access a certain piece of your data, they have to put in this PIN number to get to it. Or maybe they have to have a certain type of certificate to get to the information. Using the SSL certificates, you have a public and a private key. So you keep your private key private, but you can share that public key with other agencies. And as long as you see that public key coming in, you know that it's probably somebody that you've said can go ahead and come in there. But you can also use more advanced types of transfers using certificates on both sides to verify information. And some possibilities that I see with this are email verification, where you have like a trusted list of senders that all have Gecis installed, and that way you know that the email's correct, and it doesn't have spam or anything like that. News agency feeding. Right now, I see those with the RSS feeds, and this would be something that could allow that. Maybe all these news agencies sign up, and then you get like a big list of them, and you could just click on the ones you want, and it'll automatically feed through the Geci, rather than having to go to each of their individual sites and sign up as an RSS feed. Vendor transfer agreements. Many times with the government and other companies that I work with, you have to transfer data between them. And maybe this is a nice way to automatically know that both parties are verified and correct, and keeps everything secure and encrypted. Government access credential. Currently, like if you want to access a government system, you have to have a common access card. And this may be a way to get around that, to use some other type of access credential that's a little more standardized across the industry rather than customized for the DoD only. And virtual world assets. Whenever you use online worlds, you can store your stuff, but it's often more advantageous to have like maybe a separate storage outside of those virtual worlds where you can put the information, and then have each of the virtual worlds be able to consume that information, kind of like a 3D world inventory that is stored somewhere outside of their particular platform, so that you can use it in multiple platforms, but keep your stuff in one spot and keep track of it that way. And that's the end of the presentation there. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the example of the autofill. All right, in this case, we have our form I call token autofill. And I have two tokens I've added already, which is address and a zip code. So what I'm going to do is generate an HTML page that I've made that kind of simulates a checkout process. So we hit it, and we see on here that our address is automatically filled in, and our city, state, zip or not, our zip code is, and the rest of them aren't. So let's say, for instance, that I always knew that what my state was, and I wanted to go ahead and put that in. So I could put in, whoops, caps lock is down, put in state, and I could put in, let's say it's Missouri. Then I hit add, and I have this set to where it shows the XML every time. So we'll ignore that for now. But now if I reload the page, we'll see that it automatically fills. Now the important feature of this is that you can make as many of these little tokens as you want, and different website vendors can automatically consume this information. And let's say, for instance, that you didn't want everybody looking at your credit card, but you wanted to put a PIN in and allow it to put the information in. So on the website, they can call out like a third-party API from the Geci site that will grab this information automatically. And depending on whether or not the PIN was correct, it would allow it to autofill the other information. So that'd be a way to protect information like the credit card and things like that. But for most purposes, we have a lot of fields that we fill out all the time, which have information in them that's redundant, that we fill out on a bunch of websites. So it'd be nice to have like one central repository stored in the cloud where it can autofill our forms. And this is just one example. I mean, there's a whole bunch of examples I wanted to come up with, but it's very time-consuming writing these applications. So this is what I got, and I probably spent about 60 hours on this project so far, just getting all this stuff done. But I think it's a very worthwhile endeavor, and that's all I have. Thanks.